Welcome, everyone. I would like to introduce Hal Kerfis. He's one of my agents here at Scalzo Commercial and New Development in Bethel, Connecticut. We are going to start to go into in-depth of what's going on with the supply chain that has some repercussions to commercial leasing. So, Hal.
Yeah, hi, Michelle.
Hi, Hal.
You forgot to mention your name, so I'll mention it.
Thank you very much. Yes, I'm Michelle Brown. I'm the commercial manager. This is like one of my third podcasts, so I do forgive me.
All right, no problem. I've been very much involved with this question about availability of product, availability of products that go into make things, and the problems caused by the pandemic that really ushered this in. Mm-hmm. And when you look back on the pandemic, everything before then was hunky-dory. I mean, that the economy was expanding, it was all in balance. Nobody thought that there would be any problems in the year of 2020. Mm-hmm. Then all of a sudden, boom, we get the pandemic. At first, people thought it would only last for a short period of time, but it kept going and going and going. Right. And as a result, you had all kinds of imbalances in terms of production. For instance, the sawmills were not operating as much as they were before. Mm-hmm. As far as the lumber is concerned, the steel plants were not operating as well as before. Mm-hmm. A lot of this was based on decisions that these people were making to cut back because the demand wasn't there. Right. And even in the area of microchips, which new cars, mm-hmm. rely more and more on to run them and to do all the functions that new cars do. Mm-hmm. So a lot of this sort of went by the wayside. Now, in terms of the microchips, what happened was the car companies cut back because they didn't have the demand. Right. And the various companies that did devices of all sorts picked up that mm-hmm. production. Mm-hmm. And as a result, when things started to loosen up a little bit, it's not there. Right. Okay. So let's get back to building. Most of my stuff is development, or a good part of it is development. Right. And we're talking about, let's say, multifamily development. Right. Let's say we're going to do a couple of hundred units someplace in the area. The problem is that during the pandemic, people were very, very cautious. I had a lot of deals in the pipeline that all of a sudden went flat. Right. Okay, in other words, I'm not going to do this because I don't know what's happening tomorrow. Right. So they're not going to do this, so they pull back. They don't consummate the deals. They don't try to get approvals if approvals are necessary. And the banks aren't lending anyway, so right. Where are they going to go with this? Right. So if the banks are not lending, you can't build a $35 million development or a $40 million development.
Right. But Hal, are you finding out that because of the shortage of supplies in all the different aspects of the commercial, that the banks are taking that in consideration when lending? So just like you're talking about new construction, so the banks are looking at the fact that there is a lack of inventory of supply, that they themselves are now pulling back. So they're another industry that has been affected by the supply chain.
Well, everybody is because, again, like I said before, prior to the pandemic, everything was in balance. The economy was perking along fine. When you have a setback like this where you have unemployment, I mean, just tremendous unemployment, people weren't working. They had to come up with incentives for people just to survive. Everything gets thrown out of whack. Right. It gets thrown out of balance. So what happens is as you try to catch up, with that production, then you run into the second problem, which is the supply chain. Okay.
Right.
Now the supply chain can be even more onerous and longer in terms of trying to get it back into shape than the actual production.
Right.
Okay. So let's say now that, I think that lumber, for instance, has hit its peak. We're coming off the peak, but it's still high.
Right, that's great news.
Yeah, that is great news, but it's still high.
Right.
I know I'm dealing with a number of developers that want to go to contract, and they're sort of like slow walking it because they want to see what's coming next, when it's going to happen, things are going to loosen up a little bit. On the other hand, they do know that because other people are doing this, in other words, they're competitors,
Right.
they're slowing up. They know that there is an opportunity there because if they build and there's not a big supply out there, they're going to rake it in.
Right.
Okay,
Right.
so they're caught betwixt and between. And
But didn't you think that, like, prior to that, I think the development of different, like the, especially like the apartments, 180, whatever, it was a little slower. I mean, they were developing because the demand was there.
Yeah.
It looked like when the pandemic came, even though they're slow, the transaction, it seems like there's more, people in play. There's a lot more people who are looking, because I know my phones are ringing because everybody's looking for that. Everybody wants to be, want to develop apartments, condos, single family homes, and all those things like that. But I agree with you because with the fact that they're getting to these transactions, but they're slowing the transaction down, waiting for the economy to turn over as far as the supply chain is concerned.
people don't like unknowns. They don't like uncertainty.
Right.
And they're taking a risk. I mean, if they're going to build something that's going to cost them $35-40 million, they want to make sure that they're not going to get put into debtor's prison.
Right.
So I can understand that, but let's get back to the supply chain for a second. So I've been working on a deal, as you know, where it's a new car dealership. I won't say where it is, but they were going to take a significant amount of space to lease for a significant amount of period. And we're talking about maybe 45,000 square feet or so, which is important. And they are holding back. We're ready to sign a lease, and all of a sudden we have a problem. Okay, so they're holding back. I've looked at the situation carefully because I want this deal to move along, and found that the leading producer of microchips, or whatever the chips are, the various kinds of chips, is in Taiwan. Okay, they're number one, even more so than the one in our country. They're saying, hey, we're going to have this problem solved from a production angle by the end of this month, the end of June, right? Which is great news.
That's great news.
However, the follow-up to that is, but it will take the supply chain up to 7 or 8 months to get all of this stuff through. Okay, which means that somebody who's making a decision wants to see a little bit more in terms of facts before they finish that decision.
Yeah.
So it's difficult, and the same thing with building homes or any kind industrial, which is a very strong category right now.
Right, exactly.
They're having trouble too because they use steel and various other things that are in short supply or peak prices. So it's all sort of wrapped up in that problem.
Right, and then the demand for industrial is high, warehouses, anything like that. But the thing is the problem is now they're finding, in fact, that they don't have the product to put into the warehouses.
Well, that's it.
So it's like the circle keep going over and over.
It's all related. It's all related.
It is all, everything we do is technically related, and we would think, okay, steel has affect our business. Lumber, because we do a lot of development, affects our business. I mean, I was looking at some numbers about what it costs for a certain company to actually build. And we're talking like $350 a square foot. The way the numbers are going in right now, with the expense of the nails, lumber, and whatever, and then you have to add that. You have to add the employment and the labor, and that's a lack of labor.
Getting paid more
Yes.
to not work than to work.
Right.
Some of these people.
Right. So we've got labor issues. We've got a lot of things, but I think that we, like I said, we're going to come out of this, and we're going to be able to fulfill some of the obligations that we have already on the books,
Yeah, we've been talking about the bad news.
Right.
The good news is what you said. We're going to get out of this.
We're going to get out of it.
Nothing stays the same.
Right.
I mean, if you try to compare now to a year ago or 2 years ago, forget it. It's all different,
Right. Right. It's
the
not the same.
ground rules are the same, are different. The players are different. The market needs are different. Everything's different. It always changes. I mean, we have to accept that and roll with the punches and understand that. So I think that once we get the production back up, because we came out of a very bad period.
Right.
Once we get the production back up and start to move this stuff through the supply chain, I think we'll be okay. And it may be sooner than you think, because a lot of people are yelling, let's get this done,
Right, we do. We need it. We need it desperately just to keep things rolling and everything else.
Yeah.
So, Hal, what else is there that you think that's affecting our the commercial as far as other than
let me
supplies?
just say one more thing before I answer that. You have had certain things that have happened that are slowing down this process. For instance, the West Coast, they have all these ships lining up at the dock, and there's not enough people, longshoremen, to empty those ships and get them moving through the chain.
Yeah.
And that's the labor part of it.
Right.
Then you have other situations where it's being affected in the same way in terms of our country, in terms of the I forgot to mention, we had a problem with the Suez Canal.
That's right.
If you recall.
That's right. That one ship or
one ship held up everything for a week. Now, you wouldn't say, well, a week isn't a long time, but when you have hundreds of ships lined up behind that, other hundreds that say, hey, I'm not going to go in there, I'm going to go around the tip of Africa.
Yeah.
The Cape of Good Hope, I think they call it. If that's the case, you're going to get a big disruption in supply.
Right. You don't realize that. You don't realize something that's that far away that has that ripple effect all the way up to the United States and the supply chain and everything else. I mean, just like if there's any issues with oil, refineries or whatever, it takes, days, a few days really, to have that ripple effect. And that's what's happening, that we had too many of them that at one time, that plus there was other issues with oil.
Look at the pipeline for the Southeast.
Right.
It was only interrupted for a couple of days, and it caused all kinds of havoc, So this supply chain, people don't think about that. They just think about production. You produce something and you get it to the market. But that's just really the tip of the spear.
No, it's true. I mean, it makes the consumer now more aware of how one thing is connected to the other, and that is just like I say, that ripple effect that will affect a lot of different industries. Like we have a large, I would say, department here that does a lot of restaurants, and we at COVID time, I mean, we would think that they'd slow down, but they increased. But because of the supply chain, it's with the restaurants, they can't get the food, the supplies that they need to operate. So now we have another, slowing down a bit. So people are now kind of like waiting to get into the market.
Yeah, well, that's true. But by the same token, if I happen to be a restaurant owner that has made it through the process, in other words, I've taken my lumps, but I survived. I see it as an opportunity because there's less competition. If I want to expand my restaurant chain, there's a lot of restaurants that could be picked up for a song. Okay. So that's an opportunity. Problems cause opportunities.
Right.
You know.
What other issues that you see that is affecting commercial as far as leasing and sales other than the supply chain?
It's amazing to me. Last year, pandemic year, was a complete waste. I mean, nothing was happening. And it was so refreshing after the first of this year to see things opening up, people calling, people saying, hey, I need this or I need that, or I'd like to at least look at something. And that was refreshing compared to what it was in the previous year. I see more activity, much more activity than there was. Whether it's, in this business, everything is slow.
Right.
I mean, even if it's fast, it's slow.
That's true. That is true.
And if you want to do a lease, it's going to take you maybe 6 months to do it.
Right.
And get it done and get it paid out and have the whole bit. In some cases, and it's a funny thing about this business, you can get a listing the first time. You only have 6 months to sell that thing or lease it.
Right.
And you find out you have lots of interest, but you haven't been able to make the deal.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So it goes to somebody else. And for another 6 months, and they can't quite get it together either.
Right.
And then it goes to the third person. And by that time, you're in the chain of decision. Right. And that third person takes the listing, and all of a sudden, the next day, he has an offer.
I know. That's what you always want to be, that third person.
Right. Well, you don't know.
Want to be the first.
You don't know. No, I've had lots of first listings that have worked out. But I'm just saying that the anomaly of the business is kind of crazy.
Right.
So, it is what it is.
It is, and it's a very interesting occupation and business to be in, is in the commercial world.
Well, I've been in corporate, and I did quite well in corporate. I've been an entrepreneur, and I've been in this business for the last 35 years or so. And the thing I like about this business is that you have complete freedom.
Yes.
Nobody tells you what to do.
Yes.
I mean, you're an independent contractor. You make as much or as little as you deem sufficient. And there's the hunt, the chase.
The chase, yes.
And when you land a deal, it's usually a pretty damn good number.
Yes.
In the end.
Yes.
So, I do like this business. I enjoy it very much.
Well, thank you. Well, Hal, I'd like to thank you for coming in and doing this podcast. And I know that you and I are working together on some great deals that we would hope to report soon. That we got over the finish line, and we will be doing some other ones, real recent soon. So please, come back. Let's talk.
My pleasure.
And if anybody who would like to have some, information, or would like to have, a topic that you would like us to discuss or to find out about us, please give us a call. And it's at 203-744-7077.